media, we've been approached by about 3 different film companies in the U.S. about doing Startup Nation, the movie, for a U.S. audience. That's not public, by the way, but we are happy. This is off the record. But yeah, exactly. In fact, tell everyone. So we're just got a Twitter. Yeah. So we're in discussions with some serious film companies, and my wife, who is in the media business, she's probably going to produce it, and she's been talking to some film directors, and this question comes up with all these directors, these American directors. How do you deal with the conflict? We've got to get into the conflict. And the line she uses is, the way to approach this subject in this movie is, whatever your views are on the conflict, whatever your views are on the politics of Israel, the Israeli-Palestinian, all that, we're asking you, the viewer, we're not taking a side on all that. We're just asking you to check that at the door for 90 minutes. Give us 90 minutes, get a big bucket of popcorn, sit down, and let us tell you a story for 90 minutes. And then you can go back to the politics, and you can go back to the conflict, and you can go back to all those things you associate with Israel. But for 90 minutes, come into the movie theater and leave all that at the door. And I will tell you, that was the approach we took to writing the book. I always said, when I was meeting with publishers in the U.S., I said, I want to be clear. Because they would all say that part of the appeal with some of the publishers is, what is literally the single most reliable, consistent, and largest book-buying demographic in the United States? Jews, right? Jews buy books. Talk to any publisher about this. Jews buy books far disproportionately to any demographic in the U.S. And so there was appeal to our book. They tell us, do you know Alan Dershowitz's book sold this many books, and Michael Oren's book sold it, and they were trying to comp were all these books. And I would say, I want to be clear about something. The book we want to write is not a book for Jews. They're sort of perplexed, writing a book about Israel, but it's not for Jews. I say, look, I'm not saying it's a book that Jews won't be interested in, but it's not a book for Jews. It's a book that's going to be in the business section of the bookstores, not in the Judaica section or the Middle East section. In fact, if you go to a Barnes & Noble store today, you see it's sitting there that our book is not in the Judaica section. It's wedged between Too Big to Fail and Super Freakonomics. I know this, by the way, because there's a Barnes & Noble in our neighborhood in Tribeca, and my 2.5-year-old and I go there every weekend, and we walk by and he'll say, Daddy's book, because he sees exactly where it is. He recognizes the cover because we have a couple of copies lying around the apartment. You'd be surprised to know. But that's the point. It's not a book for Jews. It can't just be. It's a story that will be inspiring to Jews, and it's a story that we need to tell. But we need to view it as a topic that is of relevance to people's lives, regardless of their connection or what they think is the traditional interest in the Middle East, which is typically conflict.
And I happen to be of the Jewish faith. And one of the things that we're very because I think it's a relatively small people, we're very self-centered. And I don't mean to be offensive to anybody, but in reality, most people really don't care as much about these issues as we think they do. And it's part of our daily existence. We're always struggling. Get up in the morning, and if you're in Boston, how do I find kosher food to go to this meeting or here? I hope people don't hate me because I speak to a guy, a very close friend. I called him the other day. We have an it's an IP story of technology. We have a VIA-based IP PBX that sits in our office in Boston. This guy, we were working on a project in Italy. He's Lebanese. He now has to go back to Beirut, so I call him from my office in Herzliya. I dial 8 for external numbers, 9 for internal Israel numbers. I call 8. I call him on his mobile phone in Beirut. And people don't give a crap. And I think, my guess is most of the directors that you spoke to who made those comments may be Jews. And my guess is if you find somebody, a director who's not Jewish, in Boston, we took a guy named Graham Gunn to our synagogue, unfortunately burned down in Boston, Young Israel, Brookline, a historically wonderful community. We took a guy named Graham Gunn, who's this world-class architect. He ran around the world. He was fascinated by the culture, by the story, by the history of Jews, and built one of the most beautiful synagogues that probably exists in America. And the guy is as Jewish as I am Protestant, and I'm not Protestant. I know what a good analogy is there. I think people don't care, and some of the underlying stories that you may want to include in the movie is the fact that at Chemi's office, on a weekly basis, you've got plenty of non-Jews. You've got Arab guys working there. You've got, no offense to anybody, you've got African American who aren't Jewish who come here on business. And they eat in restaurants and everybody is here. And the reality is that Israel is so much more, and people, we just don't like to talk about it.
Right.
And now we're starting to talk about it.